So one of the common questions that people ask is why is internet expensive in this part of the world in Ghana? Why is it that it is expensive to buy data, or if you buy the data just within the shortest possible time, the data is exhausted? Yes, even though some people have accused the telecommunication firms in the country in relation to their greediness and their insensitivity on the plight of the common Ghanaian or citizen, it is important you understand the context of the discussion and know the contributing factors that has led to the high cost of internet here in Ghana. And that is exactly what I want to share with you in this video. To begin with, there is a report that has been published by the Alliance for Affordable Internet in the year 2020, reported by the africareport.com. Now, according to this data, you will realize that Ghana is, among others, the cheapest, or the country in Africa with the cheapest cost of data, because it increases to countries like Togo, Chad, the Central African Republic, Libya, and Equatorial Guinea as being the most expensive data cost countries on the continent. But let's focus on Ghana. The question we ask ourselves is, why is data expensive? Why is the cost of internet expensive here in Ghana? There are, among other things, four factors which are contributing to the plight of where we are in relation to why data is expensive in the country. And it is important you understand these four factors, so the next time you buy data, you don't scream that telecommunication firms are screwing us over, but you understand that we are where we are because of a number of factors. The first reason why data is expensive here in Ghana is taxes. The government of Ghana over the year has put a couple of taxes relating to communication that increases the cost of internet generally in the country. Currently, there are about 5 different forms of taxes that have been levied on communication service here in Ghana. And at any time you buy data, you buy airtime, these taxes are going to be contributing to the fact. On the average, about 22% of the money that you pay for an internet bundle or airtime goes directly to the government of Ghana in the form of various types of taxes. The question we ask ourselves then is, what are these taxes that are constituted? Now remember, because these taxes are indirect taxes, it means they are paid by the final consumer, you and I. So as you are buying the data to use, as you are buying the airtime to be able to make voice calls, you are going to be the one responsible for the payment of these taxes, because they are all indirect taxes. The first one is what we call the communication service tax. So the communication service tax was passed by an act of parliament called the Communication Service Tax Act 2008, Act 754. Now, in this act, the government of Ghana, approved by the parliament, charged or imposed a 6% tax on communication services. This was, however, increased to 9% by an amendment act, which is the Communication Service Tax Amendment Act 2013 at 864, which increased the rate from 6% in 2008 to 9% in 2013. However, there is a new act which has now reduced the rate from 9% now to 5%, which is the Communication Service Tax Amendment Act 2020 Act 1025. So that is the first form of tax that is contributed. So currently, every data that you buy, each voice airtime that you purchase, you are going to be paying 5% of the amount to the government in the form of the communication service tax. But the question we ask ourselves is, why did the government introduce the communication service tax in 2008 and increase it in 2013 and then reduce it later in 2020? The purpose of the communication service tax was to provide government with revenue, so that the revenue that will be generated from these taxes, at least 20% of the revenue, will be used by the government to finance the National Youth Employment Program and also to support the national development agenda of the country in general. That was the reason for the introduction of the communication service tax. So that is the first element of tax included in your data cost. The second element of tax is the common thing you know, which is the VAT. So the VAT has also been increased from 12.5% to now 15%. So now you're going to be paying a VAT of 15% on all the purchases, which means that increase in the cost again for the data. That means that technically you're going to be paying the same, but the amount of data, the amount of airtime is going to be reducing in principle at the end of the day. Now, this has been introduced in the 2022 Act passed by Parliament, Act 1087, to increase the rate from 12.5% to 15%. It is also in a way to help government to raise revenue to finance its expenditures. In addition to this, there is also other three forms of taxes. That is the Ghana Education Trust Fund levy, which is 2.5%, and the National Health Insurance levy, 2.5%. All of these are taxes introduced by the government to provide funding in the Ghana Education Trust Fund to enable governments to, provide scholarship, finance rehabilitation of various institutions, and also help in the educational sector of the country. Then the National Health Insurance levy, definitely to help government to provide some funding available so that they can run the National Health Insurance scheme in Ghana. Then another form of tax that is available is what we call the COVID-19 Recovery Levy Act, which was passed in 2021. Now, the purpose of this levy was to help government to raise revenue to support COVID-19 expenditures and to provide for related matters. So the first element contributing to the high cost of internet in Ghana is because of the five forms of taxes that I've just mentioned: the communication service tax, the National Health Insurance Scheme levy, the GET Fund, the COVID-19 Recovery levy, and then also the issue relating to VAT. These five taxes are all forms of indirect taxes, which in percentage terms constitute 22% approximately, or on the average, on each data that you purchase or each airtime that you buy. That is the first element of the pricing scheme, and that is why data is expensive. But in addition to the numerous taxes that are on the data that you purchase or the internet cost that you incur, is going to be second, infrastructure improvement. Usually, the government of Ghana over the years has invested literally close to zero when it comes to the telecommunication industry. Yes, around August 2022, the government of Ghana, under the auspices of the United Nations, launched or established an agency at the Ministry of Communication called the Ghana Investment Fund for Electronic Communication, that is GIFEC. Now, the purpose of this GIFEC is to be able to help in the rural telephony and digital inclusion project across the country. And with that, it was expected that the government of Ghana will invest about $200 million into that project to ensure that infrastructure systems are established and various IT centers are constructed across the country. But really, when it comes to the infrastructure facilities needed to run coverage of internet, this has been the role of the telecommunication firms. MTN, for instance, has committed from 2021 over $1 billion into infrastructure facilities, and they are working with the government so that they will be able to introduce what we call the domestic roaming system, so that irrespective of the network you are on, even though you are not on MTN, if you are somewhere, there could be shared infrastructure system, so there will be increase in the coverage of network across the country. This investment is supposed to be made by the government, but if the private sector, if the private entities are the ones making the investment into the infrastructure facilities, definitely you don't expect them to give you for free. They are going to be charging a high price for it. That leads it to the third reason called profitability. The telecommunication firms exist to make money for their shareholders, because ultimately the objective of the entity is to maximize the wealth of its shareholders. So investing over $1 billion into infrastructure facilities, we have to charge more to be able to make profit at the end of the day. So the profitability scheme of the company is also something that we need to understand. They cannot make these investments, use shareholders' fund, and at the end of the day run at a loss. Then the company will no longer be there. So at the end of the day, they have to include their profit margin to ensure that they are making enough profit to be able to pay dividend to shareholders and ultimately increase the wealth of the shareholders through the increase in the value or the share price of the company. So the profitability agenda of the company is also one of the reasons why there is higher cost of data in the country. Then suddenly the fourth thing that we can talk about is the general economic issue. Recently MTN sent out notification saying that they are going to increase their service cost because of the increment in the cost generally in the economy. So at the end of the day, if the general economy is not doing well, businesses are spending huge amounts of money in infrastructure facility, their cost of operations are high, then they have to transfer that to the final consumer at the end of the day. So the general economy of the country, the level of mismanagement and all of the problems that the country is facing are contributing factors to the high cost of data in the country. So aside the huge number of taxes that the government is collecting, less investment into infrastructure facilities, leaving that in the hands of the private sector to make these investments, the economy in general is not performing well. Inflation is skyrocketing. Monetary rate is going up. So it means if they are going to borrow money, they're going to pay high cost in borrowing the money or pay more interest at the end of the day. Who will be responsible for that? It is the final consumer that will be responsible for that. So the general economy is also a cause of high cost of internet in Ghana. That is what you must understand about why data is expensive in Ghana. If there are any things you want me to share, put it in the comment section for me. Remember to share the video, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, leave a comment and let me know what you think about the subject matter and any other subjects that you would want me to talk about on the channel. I'll see you in the next video.